The highest-rated defensive end in the country is set to announce his decision, and Arizona is squarely in there. How did we get there? What does it mean? And everything going forward? Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, Jedd Fisch has gotten a ton of kudos for his recruiting, and rightfully so. He's brought in a top 25 class his first season here at the U of A, and stuff like that is not seen, nor do we generally see anything like that. But the big fish is out right now. And again, we're going to talk a lot about it. Up to this point, T-Mac, Teteroa McMillan is definitely the highest rated player that Jedd Fisch has brought in. 5-star wide receiver, depending on which service you use. But Elijah Rushing would be a different animal entirely. You look at the Arizona defense, and the one thing you pretty much know that it's not a great defense. The pass rush has never been great, and not only has the pass rush never been great, there hasn't been guys that have had that semblance of looking like a playmaker right there. That's always been a little bit of an issue for Arizona. Not really breaking any news right there. Now with Elijah Rushing. Who is Elijah Rushing? He is, by many accounts, the top-rated defensive end in the country. He is at Sal Point, the one school that really matters. The one school that really does matter. I mean, let's be honest here. In Tucson, in the state for Arizona, generally you're good for 2 or 3 Division I prospects per year. This year is no different. So, with Rushing, who is he? He's about 6'5". He's about 240 pounds. He's a massive dude. And on top of that, he's a great kid. That's the other thing that people need to understand. He's a great kid, and he comes from football royalty. His pops played at Florida. His pops was very, very good. And not only that, you don't have to worry about anything. You know that Elijah Rushing is about football. And the one thing about him, too, is that not only is he about football, he is, again, he could be a domino effect. But on the field, Arizona hasn't had a pass rusher that could get after the quarterback consistently since Scooby Wright. Honestly, it hasn't even been close since then. Rushing is different. And Rushing is, again, he's tall, he's athletic, and he's not necessarily a bull rusher, but he can get after the quarterback because he's got very, very good technique, moves his hands really, really well. There's a reason, again, that he can go to basically any school in the country that he wants. And when I say basically any school, I mean any school in the country that he wants. He can go anywhere he wants. He's that good. And it's the top defensive line in the state. And not only is it the top D line in the state, it is a place that, again, brings in a ton of other players. Arizona has already got Keona Wilhite. We're going to get to Keona Wilhite here in just a second. But first, sorry, I've had a couple technical issues here. But first, Rushing, though. Arizona has never had really good luck getting in South Point, mainly because they didn't prioritize it. You look at Kevin Sumlin. You look at the best running back in the country this past year, Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson was the best running back in the country. You could make the case that he was the best player in college football, and you could make the case that he's probably the odds-on favorite to be NFL Rookie of the Year. Kevin Sumlin really didn't recruit him. Kevin Sumlin sent some coaches there to look cool. But did he really do anything? Did he really go all out to try to get Elijah or to try to get Bijan Robinson? No, he didn't, because he just didn't think he was going to get him. Jedd Fisch is totally different. And when I say totally different, he is, if Elijah Rushing doesn't choose Arizona, it's not going to be because of a lack of effort on Jedd Fisch's part. It is going to be because Elijah Rushing chose a different school. Now, the schools that he's looking at, obviously, you're looking at Oregon, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Arizona. Again, he could go absolutely anywhere he wanted. That's how good he is. But Arizona is squarely in the mix right there, and that is a departure from previous years. Now, with a lot of these kids, though, you also wonder how exactly are they going to be? How exactly are they going to be recruited? And exactly what is the mentality then for these for a lot of these players? And we're going to find out, because Arizona is going against a school in Oregon that has unlimited resources. And again, kids want to get paid. We're in the NIL era right now where kids want to get paid. And I don't blame the kids for wanting to get paid, quite frankly, because again, I'd want to get paid as well. But what it is also going to show you for Jedd Fisch is, can he get in there? Can he compete with some of these schools that are, at the top of the pecking order right there? Now, Arizona doesn't have a great NIL. I'm not really breaking any news right there. It definitely needs to get better. But at the same stage, though, it hasn't prevented Jedd Fisch from getting some of the players that he absolutely needs to get for his class. And that is obviously a massive deal for Arizona. Now, I can tell you that they're probably going to they would probably offer a disproportionate amount of their NIL to Elijah Rushing. And again, I am of the belief, and this is no insult, because Elijah Rushing is fantastic, obviously, and a great kid. I believe Keona Wilhite, the other defensive end at South Point, is probably the better long-term prospect, but Rushing is the goods. I mean, you don't get rated where he is without being that good, and he is that good. So if Jedd Fisch gets him, that would mean a huge deal. We're going to talk about what that would mean for Arizona on the field and whatnot, but Big thing, though, with Rushing, though, is that Arizona is squarely in there, and that Arizona has a real chance to get Elijah Rushing. And if Arizona can get Elijah Rushing, then, you start wondering, now, is Jedd Fisch, where exactly is he in the grand scheme of things then? How big can he win at the University of Arizona? Because he's now shown that he can get 5-star receivers. He can get the best defensive end in the country. Granted, there were some unique circumstances, but it certainly isn't the impediment recruiting at Arizona that I think a lot of people would generally think about. Now, one thing, though, that you don't need to worry at all about is FanDuel. Now, say to yourself, I'd like to bet on games coming up here. FanDuel, FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. Check it out. Again, we're in the slow time of the year right now, and there's nothing more annoying than sports where you don't have any interest in it and you don't have any interest in the sport. FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege is here to change that. There's nothing that is more enjoyable than betting on something where you got a little bit of hard-earned scratch in the game right there. Check it out, FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. Again, it makes things, we're kind of in the dog days of summer. Well, we are in the dog days of summer. FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege makes everything better right there. Check it out. All right, now we're going to take a quick break and talk about what Rushing would mean to the University of Arizona. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. Now, what would an Elijah Rushing commitment to Arizona mean? Well, it would be the highest rated player that Arizona has ever brought in. Rushing is he's the top rated defensive end in the country. This is a player that could go to Georgia, that could go to Alabama, that could go absolutely anywhere he wants, and they would love to take him. And he fits a need. He is he's at a priority position. The most important positions on the field: quarterback, D-end, offensive tackle. Those are generally the most important positions on the field for obvious reasons, getting to the quarterback and protecting the quarterback. Arizona has not had a defensive end, like we talked about, that could consistently get after the passer since Scooby Wright was here. That was a long time ago. And we liked Scooby Wright a great deal, but again, that was a long time ago. Rushing, if you bring in rushing along with Keona Wilhite, all of a sudden you got two of the better young defensive end prospects that Arizona would ever have on the roster at the same time, and something that you can build around as well. Because you know what kids like doing? Kids like playing with other good players. That's I'm not breaking any news right there. I'm just telling you the way it is. Kids like playing with other good players. And when you see that the top-rated defensive end in the country is going to Arizona, that starts to get your attention there a little bit. You start saying to yourself, interesting. Well, if it was good enough for him. And again, this is big because Arizona has a chance here for a kid that they would not have had a chance for with the previous coaching staff, because I guarantee you that Kevin Sumlin would have said, nope, not doing it. Can't get the kid. We're going to prioritize elsewhere. The kid that from UL Monroe, we're going to try to get instead. That's what would happen here if Kevin Sumlin was running this ship. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. I am being honest right here. And it's unfortunate that I'm being honest, but I'm being honest. So Jedd Fisch is putting in the work that he needs to put in. Now, on the field, I like rushing a lot. Don't get me wrong. But I also think that he might not – people that are expecting him to come in and average 12 sacks or whatever the case may be, that's probably not going to happen. This isn't the Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, although I thought Clowney was highly overrated, that come in and just shake college football by the core. He's not that type of athlete, but again, he's good. And it also helps too, and these are the little things that Jedd Fisch gets. The little things that Jedd Fisch gets are this, that it's important to get players on the field. It's important to get guys that look good on the resume. And what I mean by that is, again, good players like seeing other good players go to different spots. That's just the way it is. And again, I think it starts opening up some more doors, because see Elijah Rushing going there? Now let's talk about his teammate a little bit, Keona Wilhite. I have a couple of good friends that coach at Sal Point, and Keona Wilhite is right now a 3-star, but I think he should be more like a 5-star. And my buddy, who generally isn't one for hyperbole, he leaves that to me, called me when Wilhite showed up at Arizona, and he said, when he showed up at South Point, and he said, this kid's different. This kid's different than anybody we've had here, and he's a fan of Elijah Rushing for sure. He said he's physical, he can move, and you can tell that he is just scratching the surface about how good he can be. And he just kept going with it. And after a while, I'm like, all right, you sold me. And then you watch what he's able to do, and he absolutely goes out there and he dominates games in a fashion befitting of a player of that caliber. Now, I think what's going to happen is once he hits the camp scenes, I worry a little bit about it because I think he's going to blow up. I think that he could be a 5-star kid, which is wild to think about, that you could have 2 5-star defensive ends on the same team in a Tucson area high school. But that's also what you're dealing with there. You also got those type of players right there that are that good. And again, going back to Sal Point for a second, there's 5 schools in the state that really matter for recruiting at the highest levels for anybody. You got Chandler, you got Hamilton, you got Saguaro, I guess you got Chaparral or Basha, whoever you want to throw in there, and you got Sal Point. Sal Point has really taken a backseat to very few schools of late. You look around college football this past year, Bijan Robinson, arguably the best player in the country, starting running back at Texas. Lathan Ransom's a 3-year starter at Ohio State. You've got a Mateo Mele at Washington. You got Bruno Fina at UCLA. You've got a variety of different players right there. And that's just going to keep going because Sal Point right now is different than it was 20 years ago. When I was growing up, the schools, a lot of schools vied for the best players in the city. Whether that was Sabino, Saguaro, CDO, whatever the case may be. Now they all go to Sal Point. Every kid wants to go to Sal Point. Eric Rogers, I think, mentioned a while back that they had 500 freshmen, that they had 70 freshmen show up for freshman football. All the kids want to be at Sal Point. We talked about how that's the cool thing. All the kids want to be there. So Sal Point's going to continue to get the players. It's just up on Arizona then to be able to recruit them. Again, you're not going to get all of them. But like Jedd Fisch said, yes, we won't get all of them, but at the same time, there will never be a time when people wonder what our commitment was to getting some of those players, because we will stay committed to doing that. And that's what he's been able to do. And that is a tip of the cap right there. And he's done everything possible with Elijah Rushing. He brought in his brother Cruz, who probably not a Power 5 player, but he's a good kid. He's a pretty good athlete. At the very least, he's going to be a special teams player, good community dude. Those are the kind of things that Jedd Fisch gets that the previous coaching staff didn't get, nor did they even try to get. And again, that's why there is a tip of the cap to Jedd Fisch on that one. But he's gone all out. He's done everything that he can do. And I would imagine that Arizona will continue to recruit Elijah Rushing till the end. Keep in mind, Arizona, last time they went against Oregon for a 5-star kid, the kid initially committed to Oregon, but then there was a coaching change, and he ended up at the University of Arizona. So, again, recruiting is fluid. You're always going to recruit a kid until the very end. That's what they're doing. Again, so it makes a lot of sense there. Now, when it comes to like a projection here, it's hard for me to project a kid that's a defensive end in Tucson. The one thing about him is when I go to those games, you kind of think that he should probably dominate more. But again, when the national experts look at him and say that's the top D end in the country, based off what they've seen in camps, based off what they've seen other players, obviously you got to take their word for it right there. And with Wilhite and Rushing lining up opposite each other, that's going to be a problem for a lot of different schools right there. So we'll see what happens though. But Jedd Fisch, again, he's like we talked about. As when it comes to recruiting, this dude gets it. All right, we're going to take a quick little break. We're going to talk about then building that size on the defensive side of the football. Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now we're talking about building size on the defensive line right here. You look across the defensive line, you got dudes like Big Bill Norton. You got, obviously, off the edges, you're bringing in some other big players as well. And you've still got your quick twitch guys, your Deuce Davises of the world. But the big thing was getting bigger. You got Tyler Manoa, you got Tia Savea. These are all big 325-pounders. And like Jedd Fisch always says, if we're going to miss with big players. And that's what makes a ton of sense right there. I am a big fan of that. Missing with big players, not players that look like me. We don't want that anymore. But Elijah Rushing, though, is a dude also that just looks the part. 6'5", 240 pounds. He's going to continue to get bigger. Tyler, I can't even imagine what Tyler Owens is going to be able to do with him once he gets him on campus. That's going to be I think that's going to be a real treat for many, many people right there. Now, also when it comes to this defense, though, who's going to be that Hunter Echols type right there that really kind of emerged this past year? Is there going to be that guy? Obviously, you got Keona Wilhite coming in the following year. Yes, I know that he took his visit to Washington. I still think he ends up at Arizona. And you possibly end up with Elijah Rushing, which would be a very nice little duo right there. But right now for this coming year, it's just about continuing to add size. You look at the linebacker core, Jacob Manu's always going to be small. We know that. But you've also got Justin Flo, who is not small. And you've also got Leviticus Sua coming into play. Leviticus Sua is obviously a very, very big dude, out of modern day, 4-star linebacker. Lot to like about him. But the big thing with Arizona, though, is to continue to add talent on the defensive side, because we talked about it ad nauseum. I have no doubt that Jedd Fisch is going to continue to be able to recruit really good offensive players. That I have no doubt about. Quarterback, wide receiver, running back, even on the O-line. I don't worry about it because I think he's got that handled. Obviously, defense is where you need to see them take that next jump. And again, getting Elijah Rushing would be a huge move in that right direction. So we're going to keep you totally afloat on this. Again, he's down to 4 schools. A lot of people think it's Arizona and Oregon right there in the mix. But if you were able to get Elijah Rushing, that would be almost feel like a recruiting turning point almost at the University of Arizona. because he's that big. Again, he's literally rated by almost every service as the top-rated defensive end in the country. Those kind of players generally don't come to Arizona no matter where they are. So could a player who could go anywhere he wants, could he choose the University of Arizona after, Bijan Robinson, who was in that same boat, didn't even really look at Arizona, partially because Kevin Sumlin wasn't an option. We will find out right there. But again, he's going to be announced on Thursday, so we'll keep you totally up to date on that. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit more about it, preview that decision and everything. But as always, really appreciate all of you keeping this, making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. We'll be back with you tomorrow, breaking everything down. Again, big week for Arizona football right there. A massive week. And we're going to continue to break it down as we go. But as always, thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day.